Welcome to the Spiritual Life Pals podcast, where we take the spiritual approach to getting the most out of life, being real, and learning along the way. Join us on our journey so we can be each other's spiritual life pals. Welcome, everybody, our friends, our pals, whatever you want to call yourself. Welcome back to the Spiritual Life Pals podcast. I am here with mi padre, George.
Welcome, everybody.
Today, we said that we would have a specific topic that we talk about, and last episode was kind of just to get to know us. This episode is a specific topic. We have, ironically, or I guess I don't really know what that word means. I feel like Alanis Morissette when I say it, whenever I try to use that word, because she didn't know what it meant either when she sang her song. But we're going to focus on where you put your attention. The attention is the focal point of this episode. Was that ironic? I'm not good at irony. I don't know. Don't call me a poet.
I don't know if that was ironic, but you have to ask yourself, like, Ryan, what is it that makes a person happy, or what makes them sad, or whatever emotion that they're feeling?
Yeah, and I think it's easy to say, like, well, personal experiences can make you a certain way, and you go through life, and you have those personal experiences, and based on them, kind of determines who you are. But if you take a more basic elemental approach to that, you realize, well, everyone has negative experiences, right? Like, if you're a 10-year-old kid, you've likely had many negative experiences that made you feel bad, and also many that made you feel good, hopefully, or hopefully more. But it's maybe a well-kept secret that depending on which experiences you decide to put your attention into, that will start to shape who you are as a person. That will start to shape, and when you start shaping who you are, I mean, like, it'll start forming thoughts in your head. You'll start vibrating at a certain frequency, which means that you're aligned with certain thoughts. And then when you start seeing things with a certain thought aspect or perspective, you start changing your entire perspective of the world around you. Because then you'll start thinking things. If you align your thoughts with negativity, you'll start thinking negative thoughts, and then you'll start to become a perceived negative person. And that all is because of the very basic thing of, where did your attention go? And one thing that a lot of people that I talk to about this stuff is they don't even realize that they can put their attention back on itself, which is a strange concept, right? Like, how do you put your attention back onto itself? And why that's important is because it allows you to say, it's the whole self-reflection thing. We talked in the beginning of our last episode. I'm big on self-reflection. And the reason for that is because I believe it allows you to gain great spiritual advancement. So if you're focusing on what or where your attention is in and of itself, you can start to find out some stuff about yourself. And then when you start finding stuff out about yourself, you can start making changes personally. George, do you have anything to add to that?
I do. So really, it comes down to, everything Ryan is saying is about, what stories do you tell yourself? Those experiences that you had in the past, they don't have to shape your future. They don't even have to shape your now. But if that's where you put your attention, on those experiences you had in the past, and if they're not good experiences, but it's still where you're putting your attention, then that is kind of shaping you. You get people, or especially kids these days, who are depressed. And a lot of that is, Tony Robbins used to say in NLP, somebody would come to him and they would say, hey, I've been depressed for so long. And Tony would be like, congratulations. And he'd be like, in order to be depressed, you have to take a series of steps to be depressed. And you're successfully executing those series of steps. What are you doing to be depressed? And they'd be like, we don't, he say, like, how is your demeanor? Like, how are you holding yourself? He said, generally, are you looking up? Are you looking down? Are your shoulders slumped? Are you standing straight? How's your posture? But then he'd always say, and where is your attention when you're thinking, when you're depressed? What are you thinking of when you're depressed? And what they're thinking of, their attention is on things that make them depressed.
Well, that makes sense.
And it can easily shape who you are. And, if you're a person who's always happy, you're generally always putting your attention on things that make you happy. If you're kind of a mean person, right, that's where you're putting your attention on you're doing things that others perceive as mean, because that everything is about where your attention goes. It's those stories you tell yourself about your past. I've known people who were fantastic athletes, people who were tremendously gifted, and whether it's the arts or anything, and you're like, man, you could really, if you really focus on what you're doing, you could really put out some great work, or you could really be somebody. And you just hear it, and they start talking, no, I'm just okay. Because when they were younger, probably maybe their parents didn't approve of, their art. They wanted to be a football player instead of an artist. So they didn't push them towards art, or, somebody was telling them they weren't good enough. And that's the story they're telling themselves. Yes, I've got this gift, but I'm not good enough. And that holds them back. And you can be anything you want to be, up to some limits, obviously. I'm old enough. I probably couldn't be a champion MMA fighter today. So if I tell myself, yeah, I can be anything I want to be, and then that's what I aspire to be, it may not happen. But could somebody of my age come along and do it? Who knows, right? But all I'm saying is the difference is, if you go at something with that, I can do it. And I'm going to put my attention on the things I have to do to get to where I want to be. That's a better place to put your attention than putting your attention on, I could, but I was always told I couldn't, or I wasn't good enough, or even sometimes you ask yourself the wrong questions. I see this all the time. People are having some kind of trouble in their life, and they're literally asking themselves the wrong questions to get themselves out of that trouble. And that goes back to, they don't want to ask the questions of how am I going to do something. They're asking themselves of why they can't do something. Like, I can't do it. Oh, I should do this, but I really, why can't I do that? Well, I can't do it because, and all of a sudden they start going into this again. It's putting their attention on reasons why they can't get something done, because they don't have the confidence in themselves. And this is where a lot of people with low self-esteem, poor self-worth comes from, is because their attention is on things. And you could see, super physically fit, handsome guys, and you can see beautiful women who don't think they're beautiful. The guys who don't think they're handsome, they don't think and that's all because they're putting their attention on somebody told them. And it doesn't matter, Ryan. 100 people could tell you, you're awesome, that you're man, you're really good at this thing. And all of a sudden one person comes along and they're that critic, right? You're just okay. And that's the one thing that you will put your attention on, that one negative thing over those 100 good things, and it'll hold you back. And that's why putting your attention on something is so important for the rest of your life. And, I think spirituality is really, it's all about your attention. And that's why spiritual growth is so important, because it doesn't just, it's not just growth in your spiritual life, it's growth in your entire life.
Yeah. And the reason why, if one person says something and that's what you believe, like 100 people come up to you and say you're a beautiful person, another person comes up to you and say you're ugly. Well, if you believe the person that says you're ugly, it's probably because you yourself have some self-doubt. And maybe it's time for you to go inside and say, you know what? That person, when they said that I'm ugly, made me feel a certain way. I didn't like it. And I think the reason why I didn't like it is maybe because I actually believe them. If 100 people can tell me that and I just say, oh, thank you, and I kind of, blush and walk away, but then one person says it and it makes you do that, that whole, like, you drop into the depression of, like, oh my, maybe I am ugly. If that person thinks I'm ugly, how many other people think I'm ugly? I think I'm probably pretty ugly. Self-reflect. Do some self-reflection. Why is it that you believed them over the other 100 people? Because it could be just the other way. You could have 100 people come up to you and say, wow, you're ugly. And then you feel beautiful, though. And then one person comes up to you and they say, God, you are beautiful. And you go, oh my gosh, thank you so much. Like, I kind of feel like I'm beautiful. I'm glad that someone else agrees with me. And then that's what you roll with, because that's where your attention is. That's what you believe. And that's just so important to me. So to get back to like the whole spiritual aspect of this, but like how is attention? I just want to capitalize on this. Like, how does attention have anything to do with spirituality? And last episode, we said that we believe that source or God, whatever you want to call it, is basically just raw attention. It's what gives you your ability, your life force that allows you to experience and direct your awareness. And I'll do a quick experiment with the listeners here. So if you were to close your eyes and you put yourself in a white room with padded walls, just kidding, the walls don't have to be padded, just a white room, and you put some objects in there. Let's say there's a guitar sitting in the corner. Let's say there's a teddy bear on a bed. Okay. Now you can see yourself in that room looking around at those things. Now you can take the teddy bear and just kind of like delete it. Okay. So there's the bed now, and then there's a guitar in the other corner. Now take that bed, delete it. Take that guitar, delete it. Now you're still in your room, just this white room. Now turn the lights off. It's dark in there, right? Okay, it's dark. So now turn off your awareness to the darkness. And what happens when you say that is two things. I've had people say, okay, now what? Right? I just turned off my awareness to the darkness. Now what? Well, now you're aware that there's no awareness in the darkness. And that awareness right there is the spiritual aspect of this. That awareness of who you are, that awareness that you are, is as simple as it gets when it comes to spirituality. And the other aspect is people will do that and they'll go, oh my God, I can't turn it off. I can't turn off the awareness. I can't not be aware that there's something there that's not aware, and then they get it. Like, oh, that's the awareness that you're talking about. That's the attention that's able to look around, and that is spirituality for me in a nutshell. It's not that you are this person, trying to climb a ladder to get to heaven or anything like that. It's just that you are this amazing being that has the ability to direct your awareness outside of the now moment, which is we're the only creatures that, as far as we know, that can, instead of living right here, right now, it's a curse and a blessing, but we can put our attention in the future, we can put our attention in the past, and we can dwell there. We can sit there and have our attention and our focus constantly in those places. And most of us do. That's the amazing thing. Most of us don't even live in the now. You tell someone to focus, like, okay, focus right here, right now. You're here right now. And they start thinking, well, why do they want me to focus? What does that even mean? Be here right now. Like, your focus is then on your thoughts telling you to stay focused. Like, this is it's so amazing, and it can be such a revelation when you understand just what I'm saying. You have an enormous responsibility and ability to take that attention that you probably don't even realize that you have, that you can direct, and that you're probably most likely not even aware of, or maybe you are, and you have to put that attention towards things. You're going to walk around through your day and you're going to invest your attention in something. What is it that you're putting that attention on? Because that's going to shape who you are, the thoughts that come into your head, and you're going to believe the thoughts that come into your head, which is a whole nother topic. Just because you have thoughts that come into your head doesn't mean you have to buy into them. And that's a really other weird topic. Like I said, we'll cover that another day, though. But I like to think of it as, let's say, every day you wake up, you're given an allotment. I was talking to George about this earlier today, and I just thought this was kind of an interesting way to perceive it. You're given an allotment of 100 attention dollars. Okay, and throughout your day, you're going to spend your 100 attention dollars. Now, let's say you wake up and you turn on the news. Okay, I don't watch the news. What is there, like CNN, Fox? I don't even know. I don't even care. So let's say you turn on the news, you got politics on, and you walk by it, and you stop and you look at the TV and go, I hate that person. That person's always whatever. Now, take some of your little attention dollars, deposit into that. Politics, the way it makes you feel, not just looking at the TV. You can look at the TV and go, and move on. But if you look at the TV and now you feel a certain way about what's being said, that is your attention dollars. That energetic feeling, your emotions towards the situation, towards the event, towards the television channel, your emotions are energy in motion. So when you buy into something and you believe something, now you take your attention dollars, put it towards politics. So now you're going to walk around, and maybe an hour later, you're going to be thinking about politics still, or a politic thing will pop into your head, a thought will pop into your head, and you'll go, "Where'd that come from?" Well, you believe it or not, you put your attention dollars into that earlier, and now that's going to help dictate what the rest of your day is going to be like in terms of thought. Now, let's say you're driving to work, and someone cuts you off, and you say, "God bless America, you piece of work," and I feel like I'm keeping it so clean. No one says
Good
that.
job. Good
Yeah,
job.
no one says that. But you say that, something like that, I'm sure, and you realize you may not realize that you just put your attention because it made you feel a certain way. It gave you the energy of mad, anger, and you gave it to that person. Okay. By the end of the day, your energy is going to be depleted. Your dollars are going to be spent. And what did you put your attention into throughout the day? What did you waste your money on? You can't get that money back. You cannot relive that day that you just had. What did you put your attention on for the last week? What did you put your attention on this last year? What have you been focusing on? And I'm not just going to say, what have you been focusing on? Because a lot of times people think like, well, this grabbed my attention and I couldn't not think a certain way. Stop it. I am like, it's time for us to start taking responsibility for where our attention goes. If you can't say, I allowed myself to focus on that, then that's fine. We're on the beginning of a path of growth. At that point, you're at the beginning. You're at the start. Until you can accept responsibility for where your attention is, because who the heck's going to control your attention other than you? Now, something a little weird about that is that if you think that the government and advertisement agencies don't know how to grab your attention, you're kidding yourself, right? Like, they know how to get you to invest your attention on what they want you to buy or how they want you to make you feel. But if you're an aware person and you say, oh, they're trying to make me feel angry towards that person, or they're trying to make me feel insecure, so I buy that makeup or that whatever it may be, it doesn't work on people who are aware and using self-reflection constantly and saying, I don't need that. I know like, even if you don't say, I know I'm a beautiful person, but I have my faults. I don't need that though. Like, no one's perfect, right?
Yeah, and for these, especially these news agencies, they know, like you just said, they know how to get your attention. And the number one emotion they can invoke in you to get your attention is fear. That's why, like, if they go off for a commercial or if they're going to pause for something, they'll say, well, when we come back, how one man almost ruined an entire school district or something like that. Like they'll say something that's like, oh, I can't miss this next episode because I might be missing something. They will say something to invoke fear. And that's the emotion that even a lot of
Well,
marketing goes
yeah,
for.
I was just going to say, I mean, most marketing agencies, they use FOMO. And if you don't know what FOMO is, it's literally in the word fear of missing out. FOMO. When you have people marketing products, they're saying, look what these people have that you could also have, and look how much fun they're having and the time that they're enjoying, like this product. You're missing out because you don't have it. And that's the fear of missing out. You want that product now. You say, wait a minute, they have a new car. I need a new car. Right? Like,
They have the new iPhone.
they have the new
I've only
iPhone.
got an iPhone 12. I
Right.
gotta have a
Other
14.
people, and then they say, like, bring in your crappy old phones and we'll give you a brand new one. And you're thinking, my phone, is it crappy? I guess it is compared to that one. And then you start, it's like, but that's FOMO. It's the fear of missing out. That's what advertisement agencies use all over the world, folks. Like, just look around. It's crazy when you realize that people know how to grab attention. And you can, I mean, in some sort of weird way, you can use fear to grab other people's attention too. Like, it's what a lot of writers use, um, or bloggers, or people who leave blurbs on websites to get you, or clickbait, whatever they call that. You know, it's they have to ignite either fear or love, but fear really draws most people in because that's what most people are aligned with nowadays.
You said something earlier about when you put your attention somewhere, it's not just that you put your attention there, it's the emotion that is invoked by putting your attention there that's so important. And you can become addicted to emotions.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things about that is, and that creates habits. So if you are addicted to anger, for example, you will put your attention on angry videos or people in the media who are kind of angry, and they say things to incite that fear and that anger in you. But what I see, Ryan, is a lot of people today, you know, you'd think that they're all distracted by some media device, which is great for the media because the more videos they put out that invoke those emotions, the more people will pay attention to them. And that's what's happening. There's kind of this cycle of people wanting to be distracted from the things that are happening in the world. So they turn to these media devices. Now they got the whole world in the palm of their hand. And in that world, if you go through your last 100 videos that you watched, how did those videos make you feel? And that'll tell you kind of what emotions you're addicted to. If all those videos were of like, especially those fail army ones, that it's kind of that adrenaline thing. You know, you see people doing these really incredible things. Sometimes they don't make it, but sometimes that scares people too, right? So
Yeah.
and then you'll watch those videos over and over because you love the way it makes you feel when you're watching those things. It's not what's in there, it's how it makes you feel that's so important. And again, this will go back to why it's shaping you as an individual, because it's going to start forming habits in your life. Are you forming good habits by paying attention to things, by paying attention to you talked also about the now, paying attention to the now. Most people are living in the past or the future, right? They're thinking about things they're going to do or thinking about things that they did. And if they're not thinking about one of those two things, they want to be on that mind numbing device. But that device isn't mind numbing. It's programming you in some way.
Yeah.
And that's why you really need to pay attention to where you're putting your attention.
Yeah, and we're not going to sit here and be like, we're never on our phones. We don't ever play games. We don't ever go on Twitter, or I don't know. Twitter's like the only one I use because I actually have another podcast that I do called Ultraflex Football, and I've been wanting to bring this up because a lot of people might ask, like, how does a football podcast where you're talking with your buddies about football have anything to do with spirituality, right? And what I love about doing that podcast is that I recognize so Wednesdays are the day I do that podcast, and on Wednesdays I allow myself, once again, this doesn't happen to me, I allow it, I do it, I specifically do this, okay? I wake up, I listen to probably like 5-6 different football podcasts. I get myself in the football vibration, okay? And Thursday, Wednesday, or I'm sorry, wow, I can't do the days of the week. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, that is pretty much my spiritual work days. Like, this is the stuff that I do as like my life work. Okay, I've made myself my life's work, and that's what I focus on every day other than Wednesday. But Wednesdays, I allow my attention to go not necessarily away from spirituality, because when you're living a spiritually inclined life, you can't really ever get away from it. But I know that I'm going to focus my attention on football and all that stuff, and I know that that's going to bring up certain feelings and emotions inside me because I have a favorite football team. Go Bills, go Titans, by the way. But if you start feeling a certain way about one team, you're automatically feeling another way about the team that they're playing, right? So you live in this dualistic world. And when you're living in a dualistic world, you're not typically living in a spiritual manner. You're focused on this or that. So I know that I'm about to invest my spirit, my what do I call that? Your attention dollars on football, and football might create fear in my life. And then through the fear of like the Titans or the Bills losing, I may feel certain emotions, and I accept full responsibility for that. I don't. I can't. I can no longer go around and blame people for the way that I'm feeling. When I start to feel a certain way, when I start to feel angry, first of all, it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling angry. I got to push it down. I can't feel angry. Okay, the love is back. No, it's like when I feel angry, I get angry just like everybody else. You can't expect people to. And by the way, I also want to cover this. It's not good or bad what you spend your attention on. Okay, you can spend your attention on absolutely anything you want. Just realize that there's consequences to what you put your attention on. And the consequences of focusing on football all day on Wednesday is that I'm gonna not be focusing. It's like opportunity cost. I'm not going to be focusing on the things that I want to grow personally, spiritually, things like that. But as I was saying, it's a spiritual experience for me because even while I'm focusing on football, I can watch the thoughts change in real time. There's no, you can't have spiritual and football thoughts coming in at the same time. It's like they're either spiritual or football because you're either living dualistically or non-dualistically. And when the dualistic thoughts are coming through, I don't just buy into them and go, oh yeah, I'm like totally bought in. I go, wow, that's hilarious how the thoughts are completely different today on Wednesday, every Wednesday.
Yeah. And, you know, that's the thing about where you put your attention. Ryan just said it's not good or bad. Doesn't matter. If he wants to spend the whole day focusing on football, that's fine. We're not saying you always have to focus on, and you won't always focus on coming from a position of love. There are very few people in the history of the world that could pretty much focus all their, you know, that's where all of their focus came from, was from a position of love. The rest of us, we do have other emotions. We do sometimes get angry. So all of a sudden, you know, you forgot about that position of love for a few minutes because something happened that you didn't feel good about. So you came from a position of anger or fear or something else. But the key is to notice it.
Yeah.
To notice that. And the more you can kind of stop and notice, okay, well, this kind of event just happened. And I just realized, hey, I probably could have handled that better. And you know, I went through this when I started my spiritual journey. And especially when Ryan and I really first started grasping this stuff, we started talking about this and bouncing ideas off each other and started realizing, you know, the other day I had an event where my son did something and I got angry at him. And then when it was over, I was thinking, you know, I really could have handled that better. I definitely didn't come from a position of love on that one. You start noticing that where your attention was and where you came from on that. So let me tell you something. It could take you months,
years.
It could take you forever. You know, you're at that point where you're starting to notice it, and that's good that you're starting to notice it. It's really good that you're starting to notice that, you know, where your attention was at that time, and that maybe you didn't respond to something in that you feel comes from your higher self. But the gap, I guess is what I would like to call that, is the gap between your actions and then you noticing your actions. You start shortening that until eventually, even before it even happens, you can start saying, well, this isn't, I need to handle this the way I want to handle this. That's coming from my higher self, not from my ego self or from my angry self or from my jealous self or from my whatever. You want to shorten that gap. But in the beginning, man, Ryan, it took such a long time, really. I mean, we would talk about this and I would tell you that, man, I had this the other day and yeah, I didn't handle that well at all. But I was always thinking of it after it happened. I couldn't stop myself before it happened yet. I'm pretty good at that now, but I'm not by no means am I perfect because I still get angry. Everybody has, you know, you have those moments of, God, you know, with so many things happening in the world today, man, it's kind of hopeless sometimes. But you definitely don't want to keep your attention there. Right. You know, that feeling of hopelessness, if if you're putting your attention on those feelings of hopelessness and that you're helpless, a lot of times when people do that, they're not taking responsibility for things either, because that makes you feel like, well, if everything is out there is so bad that everything is hopeless, I'm just a victim to everything that's happening. Now that absolves me from being responsible for my life, because I don't have any control over that, because everything else is controlling what I can do. So, whether the Republicans gain the office or the Democrats stay in office, that Jim Rohn used to say this. He'd be like, if the Republicans get in office, that'd really screw things up. If the Democrats stay in office, that'll really screw things up. But he was talking about that in the terms of, he was broke. He was like 23 years old and he was broke and he had a family and he wasn't doing well. And 5 years later, he became a millionaire. Well, nothing really changed. It didn't really matter what changed politically or things outside. Nothing really changed. The only thing that changed was himself.
Right.
So it's what he started putting his attention on that got him to where he eventually was able to get to in his life financially.
Yeah, you brought up hopelessness and helplessness, and I just want to just focus on that for a second. And what happens when, I want our listeners to thought experiment here, but if you're putting your focus and your attention, and by the way, I think focus and attention as two different things. Your attention is basically what you invest your life energy in, and your focus is how narrow you zero in on that thing that you're putting your attention on. I know that sounds basic, but I'm going to get to this later when we talk about healing and stuff. But focus is important, and there's also ways to increase your focus, like for people with ADHD or whatever it may be, or people like me who just often are absent-minded. But so the thought experiment, when you, let's see, if you're this is what I'm talking about, absent-minded. See, no, but if you're, what's that?
Where's your attention right now?
It's so this is hilarious. So what happens when you're thinking about something and you're trying to search frantically for it, and I think that a lot of people can relate to this, is it's the feeling of anxiety as if it's not gonna come back, right? And then you're gonna feel silly or stupid or whatever. But I've come to the point now where I don't feel silly or stupid. I'm not worried about being anxious. I don't have that fear. So when the anxiety pops up, I go, "Hi, anxiety," and then I just kind of let it go. But back to what I was talking about with like the hopelessness, if you're gonna put your attention on something, see, it came back. I just had to not worry about it. If I would have got all absorbed in the fear of looking stupid and all that stuff, then it'd be gone forever, and I would just be sitting here like, But anyway, if you're investing your time, your energy, your awareness, your focus on something outside of yourself, can you ever control those things? And if you can't control those things, this is where it comes back to feeling hopeless and helpless. If you're investing your energy into those things outside yourself that you can't control, what's going to be the result of that? I said there's consequences. It's not good or bad whether you invest your attention in this or that. But what are the consequences of putting your attention and focus in things outside of yourself? That if those things go wrong, if those things go away that you don't like, if those things go away that you don't agree to, you feel hopeless. You can't change it. You can do nothing about it because those things are outside yourself. If you take your attention and you focus it inward into your being aspect of yourself, you can change everything. You start noticing the thoughts that often come up and you ask yourself, why? Why do those thoughts come up so often inside of me? And when you start to notice where your attention is going, you can start to understand what your true intentions are. We all go through life with um, intentions that we think we have. I want to lose weight. I want to lose 5 pounds in the next month, right? So you go through the month and you set that intention at the beginning of the month. You get end of the month comes and somehow you gained weight. How'd that happen? Well, you may have set a minor intention at the beginning of the month to lose weight, but throughout the month, situations rose up, and they said, hey, there's cake there, and I said I was going to lose weight this month, so I'm not going to eat that cake. But then, well, you know what? It's just cake. It's not that bad, right? It's like just fluff, empty calories, whatever. I'll just eat those. It'd be 400 calories, and I'll skip out on my snack later. So you eat it, and then you forget that you're supposed to skip out on your snack later. You have a large dinner that you didn't plan for. Like the main intention behind all that is for you, which is what a lot of people have, is for you to be able to eat what you want. That's your main intention. I want to feel satiated from food that makes me feel good. That's the main intention. So even though you have certain intentions, they're not always as strong as your subconscious intentions, is what I'm trying to say. And when you can start tapping into your subconscious intentions because of the thoughts and actions that you start realizing that you're doing and that you're buying into, that's when you can start changing your subconscious intentions. Because you can start stopping yourself from acting a certain way that comes from a subconscious intention. You can make it conscious, and then you can change it. And then the more you catch those subconscious intentions. I feel subconscious. I've said it so many times; it doesn't feel like a word anymore. Every time you catch those subconscious intentions and you change them, you're now creating new habits, new thought patterns, and that allows you to live life the way that you have more idealistically set for yourself.
Yeah, so, it's important, I think, also to look at, where Ryan said you can't control those things outward, and if that's where your attention is constantly going on that outward stuff, and you're feeling that helpless and hopeless. But he said, you bring it inward, because you have to find something stable. That's why, taking a deep breath, getting yourself centered. You have to find something stable, and you can't stabilize that stuff out there. It's not your job to control that stuff out there. It's only your job to control your response to those things that are happening out there. That's what you can control. And so you have to find something stable within yourself. It's funny. You look at sailors out in the ocean, and especially the new sailors, as they start getting out there and the waves start hitting, and they start getting seasick. They lose those sea legs, and they're kind of watching the ship kind of turn and twist, and also their stomach starts to turn and twist, and everything just feels like nothing is stable. And that's when they start getting sick. And the older sailors will tell them, look out over the horizon. Look out, because the horizon is stable. You got to find something stable to focus on. And physically, it literally makes you feel better just by focusing on something stable. And I'm not going to say, I'm not saying that it's absolutely true for kind of those mental things too. But if you feel helpless because everything out there, you feel it's way beyond your control, and what can you do about all this stuff? You can't do anything about it. The only thing you can do about it is your response to that stuff. Find something stable within, and that will help you tremendously in your growth.
Yeah, and it's funny because a lot of what we're talking about it is affiliated with like the law of the law of attraction, where your attention goes, your energy flows. That's how I think of the law of attraction. Every time that term comes up, I instantly go, where my attention goes, energy flows. Um, and I wrote something down. I just want to read it real quick, see if it makes any sense. But I wrote down that you receive what you give because you can't give something you don't have. So you can never not receive what you're giving. So if you're giving someone a smile, okay, you're going to receive a smile back. Not from that person necessarily. I'm not saying this is the law of attraction and why it gets tricky, because a lot of people say like if I give money, then I should receive more money. Well, the thing is if you give money, you're just going to feel more wealthy. It's like an inner thing to me. That's how I understand the law of attraction. And other people can have different thoughts and beliefs on it, and that's fine. I don't mind. That's how I understand it, and it makes the most sense to me. But you can't give something that you don't have. Okay? You have every emotion possible inside of you. You need to decide which one you're going to put your attention on and which one you're going to give to people the most often. If you're giving people smiles and laughter and forgiveness, gratitude and appreciation, if you consciously make the decisions to do that and be that person who gives those things, you're just reinforcing within yourself that you have them to give, whether it's some subconscious or consciously. But living the spiritual life is bringing those things to the conscious light. I can't give that person love. I can't give my spouse love unless I have love inside me. And that's when you realize that you're not actually giving them anything, because that's the I can't think of the word, but that's what happens is you go, well, if I can't get any, if I can't give something I don't have, then you're not giving that person love. What you're doing is you're helping them see the love within themselves. That's how the law of attraction works for me. I don't know if you agree or not.
I do. The way I look at that is when you talk about being able to give something you don't have. Let's talk about, because you hear people say all the time, "Oh, this law of attraction stuff, it doesn't work," right? But that's actually the reason why, is because they think, okay, all I got to do is focus on a certain thing, and then I'll get more of that thing. But let's take homeless people, right? You think that it just because you mentioned this, like, hey, if I want more money, I have to give money, right?
Yeah.
But if you're giving money out of, like you don't have much money, so you're gonna be like, well, I don't have much money. I've only got like $100 in my bank account. I'm gonna give 20 of it away. But you're super scared about that because you still got 5 more days left in a month, and you might have to buy gas, right? Something like that,
Yeah.
right? So you're doing it out of a position of fear. You're giving that money away with fear, but you're doing it because you think you're going to get something back. But the whole time you're doing it, you're scared to death about doing it. Then don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it if that's the position it comes from, because that's not how it works. You have to be able to give what you can give that makes you feel good, right?
And
And if that's, I don't care if that's a prayer, you
yeah.
go up to somebody and pray with them. It can be free. Give what you can give that makes you feel good first until you can give the money. And then it's because it's that feeling good that is attracting something else to you that feels good. So if maybe, and just because you gave prayer doesn't mean you're going to receive more prayers, because what happens is you start vibrating at a certain frequency of something else, and that's how all of a sudden now you can start attracting maybe a little more money into your life, because you're vibrating at a much better frequency to attract money.
that,
You
and by
can't be
vibrating
giving.
at, to
Yes,
be
go ahead.
clear, because when you say like when you're vibrating at a certain frequency to attract money, is what's happening is your thoughts are becoming more aligned. Your personal being is becoming more aligned with abundance. You may go past a business where they have always had a sign on the window that said help wanted, but maybe you didn't think that you were worthy of it, so you never went in and applied. Okay. And a person who has the thought of abundance thinks that they are good enough, and so therefore they go in and they apply. Now that person who had thought they were good enough now has a job that pays good money, and therefore they just made more money because they started off um, thinking about abundance, and they gave that prayer. It's basically the you're either focusing on love and all of its subcategories like abundance and gratitude and appreciation and forgiveness, or you're thinking about fear and all of its subcategories like hatred and jealousy and all those things. So if you start aligning yourself with love, gratitude, and by aligning yourself, this is exactly, I'm just trying to explain like what you meant by aligning yourself. Like
Right.
you're going to start vibrating at a frequency which makes your thoughts come in more aligned with who you are being as a person. It's such a weird thing to think about thoughts as like a vibration, but the way I see
Well,
thoughts
they
is
are.
exactly, it can't be anything else. Everything is vibration. I think science proves that. But but your like higher thoughts are just thoughts of love. It's when you're focusing on love. It all goes back to attention. When your attention is on love, um, forgiveness, gratitude and appreciation, abundance, all of those things, you start noticing those things in your outer world, which increases them in your world because you'll start doing more things that incorporate those abundant feelings. And therefore the law of attraction is set in motion and it works and it's undeniable because if you start thinking about, let's say, I wake up on Wednesday and I start thinking about football, and I know I have a podcast that night. I got to start doing football. What do? I turn on football stuff. Why? Because it brings more football stuff into my thought process. And then I can have a coherent conversation with guys, my friends, who love to talk about football because I align myself with football. Like, it makes sense. And it's really impossible to dispute because the more you think about something, the more like thoughts will come.
And it's not just that, Ryan. I think when you have an intention to listen, to learn something from that stuff, it's not just, it can be in the background, I suppose, but you want to hear things that you can actually use later in your podcast on those days. So it's when you're in the right vibration, the right information is going to come to you that you can say, oh, I've just heard this today. Then you give some great statistic that you can pass along to help educate other people in something about football, that because you were able to hear it. But it's because you had that intention of, and you were, again, vibrating at that frequency. You were ready. You were in the right. Frequency is the best way I could put it.
No, it's such a hard thing to describe when the only words you know really are frequency and vibration
But
and
think of it this way:
alignment.
some people, when they let's just talk about the homeless again for a second. Homeless people. Some people see the homeless people and they feel so bad for them, and they could worry for them, and they think that, it's because the economy is so bad, or because whatever reasons, like everybody's going to be homeless one day, the inflation's whatever it is, and they start thinking about all the reasons and how bad they feel for those individuals who are now homeless. You can't worry enough for them to make them better, right? The best thing that you can do is kind of like I said, it's give something that's completely free. Give them love, give them blessings, give them a prayer, give them something, give them, something to be appreciative for. Even if, again, maybe you can't give $20 out of your 100, but maybe you can give $1 if that makes you
Yeah.
feel better, right? But you give what you can, and now that you're vibrating at a higher level, again, you can't worry enough to make them feel better. All you're going to do, and a lot of people do this, they whether it's family members, your job, whatever it is, you worry so much about those things that you'll never make them better by doing that. You have to find reasons to feel good about certain things that you're doing, or about your family members, or you send love and blessings, and you have to do that because physically it'll make you sick if all you do is worry about everything. So now, not only are the people who were homeless still homeless, now you're sick and they're still homeless, right?
Yeah.
So you can't go, and this will get down into like energy healing, and where you put your attention on everything. It doesn't just, it's not just manifesting itself out there in things that you can draw to yourself, through manifestation of certain items, whether people of abundance. It could be money, it could be smiles, it could be love, it could be whatever it is. It's your physical health that you can be affecting by the things that you put your attention on, which is weird.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's such a projection. And I know that like a lot of people talk about projection, like, oh, just not project it. You're projecting onto me, but like stuff like that. But it really is a projection for you to walk by a homeless person and say they must hate their life. Like, you don't know. There's people in the East who become quote unquote homeless on purpose because they're renunciating their all of their goods, everything they have, because they no longer have a need for items and goods and stuff like that. They're ready to live off the land. Like, that's what some people desire, is to be that person. So don't just walk by and say, "Oh, you poor thing," and then that like they look up at you like, "No, I'm actually okay." Like, thanks for feeling bad for me. However, that makes you feel better, I guess, because you're in a better spot. So now you feel better about making. by sending me a prayer or whatever. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to project onto people, but you can align yourself with love. You can, if they have a bagging pot and you have $50 in your pocket and you're rich and you're like, hey, I can give them $50. If you can do it, give them $50. If you have $1 in your pocket, give them $1. If you don't have money and you can't afford to give money, give them love. Give them a smile. Like George said, give them a prayer. Or don't. It's up to you. But just realize that you're going to create more of whatever it is that you think of when you walk by that person. If you walk by them and go, oh, that person needs to get off the road and go find a job. Well, that's negativity, and that's a fear-based emotion and reaction. So therefore you're going to live the rest of your day, if you don't catch yourself, manifesting more of that. That's all we're trying to say here is this whole attention thing really is just about people focusing and learning that they can realize where they're investing their attention. What are you on a daily basis investing your attention on? And when you stop listening to this podcast and you go about your day, try to become aware, present enough to be able to self-reflect and go, what is it that I'm putting my attention on and why? Why am I putting my attention on that? Do I feel um, a lack? Do I feel insignificant? Like, why is it that I'm constantly pointing out that people don't have enough? I'm obviously not coming from a place of abundance if that's the case.
No, but here's a really good thing, Ryan. So a lot of people think, okay, we're telling them, put your attention on the things that make you feel good. We're not telling you to stick your head in the sand and think that like those other things in the world don't exist, because they do.
Yeah.
But I can't personally control or affect the war in Ukraine. But even though I can't, there are some people, I hear them at work sometimes. That's what they're focusing on. That's what they're talking about. That's where all their attention is. And there's nothing I can do about that myself personally. And I couldn't even imagine spending my whole day, again, I'm going right back into this, worrying about the people who are involved in the conflict on both sides. I can't spend my whole day worrying about that because I can't really do anything about it. The best thing I can do about that situation is it's the same thing, Ryan. It's I have to feel good because I can't give something I don't have. So if I'm not feeling good internally about myself, if I'm not feeling love, I can't
Confident.
give love.
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
not feeling right. So I can't give true, Dr. Robert Schuller said, when you pray, believe in what you're praying about, and then it has power to it. And if you don't believe it, if I can send a prayer to the people who are suffering from the war, but if I don't believe what I'm saying, then it's just words. It doesn't have as much power. So don't think that we're telling people and that you're just putting your head in the sand, and that these other things don't exist, because they do. But you don't have to put your attention on them, because you're not going to help that situation by worrying about it or by focusing on it and saying, and just remember, if all you do is put your attention on it and then you start talking about it to other people, you're building up the energy of whatever that is. So if it's war, you're building up the energy of war.
Yeah.
And
And
that's the worst thing you can do.
if you can't do something about it, like this goes back to if you have $50, put $50 in the can. If you have $1, put $1 in the can. But if you can't do something about it, if you're just going to work to talk about the war just to make yourself feel like you did your job and talked about the war, so now you can feel better about yourself at the end of the day and that you felt bad for people overseas, that doesn't make sense. You're lowering your energies, and if you can do something about it, if you're in a position of power to send aid or whatever it might be, if you can do something, do something. If it makes you feel good, makes you feel right, if it's aligned with your beliefs. If you can't, then why would you invest your attention and all that stuff on the negativity? Try to bring others up by being, I don't want to say the beacon of light, but like be love, the the manifestation of love, like I feel bad when I think about the war in Ukraine. And I don't go, oh, I don't like the feeling of bad, so I'm not going to think about that. I just, it comes up and I go, God, I feel it just doesn't feel good. And then I send out prayers to them. That's the best I can do right now. I don't have $1 million to go fly something over to them. And, I don't have a contact with Putin, to
No.
tell him
But
like,
what you can't do there, Ryan, and I know you're not, but I was saying, but for those listeners out there, is you can't say, I'm going to send prayers only to those Ukrainians,
right.
because you can't do that, because now you're still resisting. And in that if you can't let that resistance go, you're not helping yourself or anybody in that situation. Send the love out. And those who, again, those who can receive it will receive it.
Those who are, like we like to say, aligned with it, they'll receive it. They'll feel it. Like, all you're doing is you're just putting it out into the universe. And if you're putting fear out into the universe, then you're going to create more fear, because you're going to do things based on fear. You're going to live your life in that vibration, and that's going to make someone else see you. And now they're going to live their life in fear if they're not conscious enough to not fall into your trap, right? So just I just really quick, we can put an end to this conversation. I just wanted to bring up the whole aspect of like healing. So I said that I would mention it later on, if that's okay with you.
No, absolutely. Actually, I was kind of going to go there when I was talking about earlier, is that your thoughts can physically make you sick.
Yeah. So I've dabbled a lot with healing, many different types of energy healing, um, like the Reiki stuff, like all that stuff. Okay. Hands-on healing is my personal way to go, but whatever feels right for you, then that's what you should do. But what I've noticed is I just get so overwhelmed with like the whole idea of attention, because just as I say this, as I said the word said energy, said hands-on healing. As soon as I said that, when you work with healing a lot, which I have, um, like I just instantly, my hands, I can feel, uh, and you don't know until you know, but until you work with healing, most people don't notice the vortex coming out of their palms. If you don't do the hands-on healing practices, you probably don't notice them. And the best thing you can do to try to notice it, to feel it, to experience something different, is to like press on your palms and then put your hands together and see if you can feel like that magnetic push between them. And then you can like rub it over your face without touching your face and feel the warmth coming off your hands and all that. And it's quite amazing. Um, I have a funny story about that actually, but it's just the whole idea of attention. You can, as soon as as soon as I said hands on healing, my hands start like, they're like, okay, what are we healing? Like, what's the time? What was it time to heal something now? And so many times we've said in the previous podcast that your attention, and this podcast, that your attention is love. Your attention is God. Your attention is source. And source and God and love, in our opinion, is all loving, and it's healing, and it's a vibrational frequency that will heal disease, because disease is just being misaligned basically with who you are. So I've had many occasions where I've had pain somewhere in my body, and all I do is I close my eyes and I put my attention in that spot, and I don't go like, ooh, go away, pain, this hurts. I just accept it. I say, thank you for bringing my attention to this spot. I acknowledge there must be something going on, or else my body wouldn't be telling me that something's going on here. It wouldn't be bringing pain here. So thank you for bringing my attention to this spot. I'll handle this now. And I just accept it. I love it. And I move through it. And then I'll like open my eyes and I'll go, hey, the pain is completely gone. Like, I don't feel that pain anymore. And I've done this so many times. It's amazing. Now, the funny story that I brought up was I remember sitting across. So I make my wife do a lot of this stuff with me, and she's not necessarily interested, but it's what I want to do for life's work. So, so I remember taking her into the kitchen, sitting her in a chair, and we sat across from each other about 5 feet away. And I was reading a book on healing and basically how you can um, throw a, it sounds so corny, a healing ball at somebody. So I sat there and I pretended like I had my hands together, like I was packing a snowball, right? And I'm like packing the snowball, like pushing it together, and I could feel the tension between my hands. I could actually feel it. And I tell her, I'm like, okay, close your eyes, put your hands over your eyes. I don't want you to know where I'm going to hit you with this snowball of energy love, right? Like, I'm going to throw it at you though, and you tell me if this is real, because I was skeptical. I was like, oh, it's kind of silly. Like, you tell me where I hit you with this, and I threw it at her, and she like as soon as I threw it, and I watched, quote unquote, watched the energy go through the air and hit her. She pointed to her like right in the middle of her chest, right where I was looking, and she goes, like, it was right here. And I was like, you've got to be freaking kidding me! Like, that just worked? Are you kidding? Like, that's how powerful your attention is. That's how powerful healing can be. Like, and I didn't heal her. She didn't have anything wrong. I just wanted to see if I could hit her with an energy ball. It worked.
From how far away? That's what everybody's wondering right now.
No, I was about 5 feet away.
Okay.
I think I said that, but I was 5 feet
Okay.
away. But the thing is like when I was reading the book, they say like it doesn't matter how far away you are, because as long as you understand the premise behind the energy and that the energy is connecting everything, there's no difference between you and me right now, in terms of distance.
Right.
So I could throw an energy ball and hit you, and it shouldn't make a difference whether you're sitting 5 feet or 2,000 miles away, which you probably are about 2,000 miles away, right?
Yeah, roughly.
1,500, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
So maybe one of these times I'm gonna try to make a energy ball. I feel like some sort of like geeky, um, I don't know, like cartoon character that's throwing energy ball. Oh, it's just silly, but it's just really interesting to try. And attention and energy are amazing when you can harness power of them. You harness the power of your attention to change your life. You can harness the power of attention to heal yourself. You can harness the power of attention to heal somebody else. I can't tell you the number of times that I've helped my wife with a pain or with something. I remember she told me the one day, she's like, I'm just going to lay down. I want you to scan my body, from the waist up, and tell me where I hurt right now. And I put I did the healing thing. I rubbed my hand over her torso, up over her head. And I went up, down, up, down. And I was like, well, I'm putting my attention. This all goes back to attention. I'm putting my attention in my hands and just feeling for heat, basically the heat signature coming off her body, because that means there's extra energy there, which extra energy causes pain. So I'm feeling my hand over her body, and I stop at her neck, and I'm like, it's something about like your jaw area, your neck, jaw, somewhere in there. And she goes, yeah, my jaw has been killing me all day. Like it's like my back of my tongue. And I was like, well, there you go. I guess that's proof again, if you needed it, that it works. And she was, I think she was as, I don't want to say interested or impressed or kind of taken back, like, oh my God, it worked.
Intrigued
As I was, though, because a lot of the times you're like, does this actually work, right? Then you realize you're just putting your attention and focus into skepticism, which isn't going to help.
Well, I can tell you, kind of, because we're kind of winding this down, Ryan. One of the things we talk about in the beginning of when we do our podcast is kind of a book review, right?
Yeah.
So with that, this is kind of impromptu because we hadn't really even planned on doing one of these. But I can tell you one thing. So, because this will come down to the healing aspect of it, and let's just talk about one of my favorite authors when it comes to healing would be Dr. Joe Dispenza, in Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself or in Becoming Supernatural. It's all about attention and where you're putting your attention, and where your attention goes, energy flows. That's what those books are about. Like, if you want to heal yourself, you can't sit there and focus on the pain. You can't focus on the disease. Dis-ease.
Yeah.
You can't focus on that. You have to focus on the healthy you. And obviously, the books are. He's got several books.
You Are the Placebo was one of them,
You Are the
right?
Placebo. Yeah, I mean, he's got some, and they're all basically about the same thing,
Yeah.
and they all come down to attention. So if you ever get an opportunity, if you haven't read Dr. Joe Dispenza, I highly recommend those two: Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself and Becoming Supernatural, especially if you have some kind of disease
Yeah.
and you want relief from that, or the potential of relief from that. Getting relief is up to you. The information is there for you. And, um, I guess that's the same thing for everything. The information that we give people, it's there for you to change your life. It's what you do with the information that will
You Are
determine if you actually do.
You Are the Placebo was the first book that I was exposed to for of his, and I thought that book was awesome. And I love that he puts science behind faith.
Yeah.
Basically, like he proves spirituality through science, and I find it fascinating. He is one of my favorite authors in the sense in that like science faith literature. I think he's just absolutely amazing, like you said, and he does focus like all of this stuff is on attention, and this stuff is so stinking important. You can change your entire life just by realizing where your attention goes, because you're gonna create more of where you put your attention. It's as simple as that, people, folks, friends, pals. If you can just be aware and present enough to notice where your attention goes. I have a couple of questions that I just want to answer really quick. I wrote down three questions, really quick responses. So, what should I put my attention on if I want to be a happier person? And the answer that I would give to that would be forgiveness and gratitude and appreciation. If you wake up in the morning, every morning, and you want to be a happier person, you normally wake up and you're sad or you're depressed or whatever it may be. If you want to be a happier person when you wake up, notice those sad, depressing thoughts, forgive them, accept them. Don't become them, but you can accept them and say, "Yeah, that is who I was, and I forgive myself for that." But you know what? I'm grateful that I woke up this morning. I'm grateful that I have the chance to leave a positive impression on this world today. I can do something. I can smile at somebody and it might change their life. That is where that's where you decide to put your attention on in the first thing in the morning, that will snowball throughout your day. Okay, you'll be a happier person in time if you can manage to keep your focus and attention on those things. You're going to get distracted, but then you're going to forgive yourself when you do. I think that's one of the most powerful things that changed my life completely. I used to wake up just like that, depressed, anxious every day. I don't do that anymore. I wake up and I'm excited for the day because I want to make a positive impression on my life and others. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah. The gratitude and appreciation, I think, is so important, to wake up and just think of a few things that you're grateful for, a few things that you're appreciative of. Sometimes it's harder. Like Ryan used the forgiveness in the context of forgiving yourself, but a lot of people will get hung up on that forgiveness as I have to forgive something for something they did to me. And then you start dwelling on that. And then sometimes you get lost in that and you forget about the gratitude and appreciation.
Right.
Forgiveness will lead you to your salvation, right? So it's a really deep topic.
It is.
So really the gratitude and appreciation is, if nothing else, start there. If you want to be if you feel like you're not as happy as you could be, start each morning thinking of three things that you're grateful for, three things that you're appreciative of. And even before you go to bed, try to think of a few things that you're grateful and appreciative of. And it really, those small things like that throughout the day, think of something that you're grateful for, that you appreciate. And each segment of your life, as you go through your day, well, now that I'm at work, what is it that I'm grateful for? What is it that I'm appreciative of here at work? Now, some people say, I hate my job. There's nothing I appreciate. Find something
Yeah.
that you appreciate about that. Find something that you're grateful for and say that to yourself when you get there. And, you're going to find over the course of a week, it may not even take that long, that you're going to start feeling better about each segment of your life. This drive, man, this drive to and from work is so horrible. I can't stand this drive. People are terrible drivers. Find something that you appreciate about that drive. Find something that you're grateful for, and put your attention on that. Not how horrible it is, not how bad people drive. Find things in each segment of your life that you're grateful and appreciative of, and you will be a happier person.
And just to add a little bit to that is believe it. If you don't believe the appreciation and the gratitude, if you wake up and you go, "Oh, I'm appreciative of God, I have cereal in the cabinet. My dog didn't pee on the floor last night." Like, if you do that, your actual intention behind that is to be skeptical. It's to be cynical. It's to be that person. Okay, that's what you're gonna create. If you wake up and if you can be genuinely appreciative of something. If you're
That's
on your
probably the key word. Be genuine when you're doing
genuine,
it.
yeah, and realize that that energy is what you're looking for. That emotion is what you're looking for. It's the emotion of gratitude and appreciation. It's not just saying I am grateful for, I'm appreciative for. It's I feel grateful. I feel appreciative of my spouse laying next to me. You know, I love that person. When you wake up, you can say that. You can say that when you go to bed. I'm so grateful for my child in the room down the hall. And if you can only think of one thing, then focus on that one thing. It all comes back to focusing. Focus on that one thing. Now, next question. Is it possible to focus on nothing? I just thought this was an interesting I just want to throw this out there. And my response to that is you can't focus on nothing because nothing is something. That's the best way that I can explain it. You can't put your focus and attention into a void. Because as soon as you label something a void, you are now focusing your attention on that emptiness. Okay? And I don't even know why I wrote that question. I just thought it was a fun question, a funny question. I was like, can I even put my attention on nothing? Like, you kind of walk around throughout the day and not spend a single attention dollar on anything and just kind of be in a void. I was like, not really.
I can tell you right now, this is how I would answer that. No, you can't, because even when you're sleeping, you're dreaming. Your thoughts, you're wired to put your attention somewhere.
Yeah.
You can focus on a dot in the middle of a circle and say, I'm focusing on this dot, which is nothing, but it's something. It's like,
Yeah.
right. And focusing on nothing is something. So
Yeah. And those people who become apathetic, they're typically focused on whatever it is that made them get there to that point. So the next question is, how can I improve my ability to focus or concentrate? And the real quick, easy answer that everyone's going to hate is meditation. When you meditate, what happens is thoughts come up and you notice them, or you get caught and they'll take you somewhere, and you'll be quote unquote meditating for a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it may be. But you didn't meditate a single minute of those, because what you were doing was you were following the thought train. They took you right along for the ride and you went for it. Meditate, notice the thoughts when they come up. And this takes practice, people. This takes practice, and you can do this throughout the day too. You don't have to be sitting in a chair or on the floor with your legs crossed. You can go through your entire day in a walking meditation. Thoughts come up and you go, why? Like, well, that's a nice thought, but that's not something that I want to spend my energy on. So you just kind of shoo it away. You accept it, you shoo it away. And when you start doing that, it starts to declutter your mind. The thoughts will come up and you can pass them easier. Thoughts will come up, pass it on. And a lot of times, people walk into a room and they go, I forgot what I walked into the room for. Well, that's because they had so many thoughts from the moment that they had their initial thought, what they wanted to go walk into the room for. They started heading there, and then they went, oh, I wonder what time my significant other is going to get home. And, oh, I wonder what's for dinner. And then by the time you get into the room, you're like, wait, what did I come? Because you rode the thought train way away. You were not present at all. You were in your mind. Your attention, your focus was in your mind on things that have no reality. Completely, we're all just walking around Most people are walking around believing something that's completely untrue, because a lot of what people believe contradicts each other. So they can't both be true, right? So we all have this subjective view of an objective world. And it's just like a bunch of crazy people walking around. It's kind of hilarious when you think about it. Everything is, and then everyone is walking around labeling what is and how it relates to them. And that's it. And that's how most people live.
Yeah, it really is the best way. Now, I know you said people don't want to hear it, but I think the audience who would be interested in spiritual life paths probably understands that when it comes to meditation. That, but I can tell you, like John Askeroff in the book The Answer talks about, you're like a race car, and a race car has gears. So let's just take 3 of them, and if you're trying to run around in first gear all the time, you can't go very fast because your engine starts going really fast, but you don't go faster. But that's like your mind. It's racing and racing and racing and racing. And until you learn to slow those thoughts down. So when you put your car into second gear, the engine actually slows down, but the car is able to go faster. And it's slowing down those thoughts. And the way you slow them down is through meditation. And that's the way you learn to do it. It's the best thing you do for yourself.
And meditation is just basically harnessing the power of your attention. And people who reach very deep levels of meditation, they don't reach really deep levels of their brain, their thoughts. That's not what's happening. What's happening is they're having a enlightening experience of the fact that they are the attention behind the thoughts, the emotions, all of those things. That's the amazing part about attention and focus and all that stuff. Is it's extremely spiritual when you boil it down to who you really are, who we all are. We are all that, which has the ability to pay attention. So, I don't know what we're going to talk about next week. We kind of just decide, like, throughout the week, we go, what would be a great thing to lead into, or what did we just talk about that's going to lead into something very nicely? And I don't know what that is yet. Do you have any ideas, George?
It kind of goes back to that. I like to tap into kind of that higher energy of kind of what comes to us as the week goes on, of what we think, because it could be things that are happening in current events, things that we see. It could be just that feeling that this is what our audience wants to hear this week. And if I predetermine that, and I'm like, well, no, I'm on a schedule. I know maybe our audience wants to hear this, but we're going to talk about this instead. I like to tune into kind of that frequency of the listeners and say, you know what, this is what we need to talk about this week, Ryan, because this is going to be important.
All right. Well, we want to thank you all for being our spiritual life pals and tuning in this week. And we will talk to you again next week.
Take care, everybody.
The show is over and you are still listening? My goodness, you are a true spiritual life pal. We want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to join your spiritual life pals. If you haven't already, we would so appreciate it if you would subscribe to us wherever you are listening to your podcasts and review the show. To join the Spiritual Life Pals community, join our YouTube channel, Facebook group, or Instagram at Spiritual Life Pals, or follow us on Twitter at Spirit Life Pals. If you have any questions or insights that you would like for us to share on our podcast, please send us a voicemail on our website at spirituallifepals.com or message us on any of the social media platforms I just mentioned. We appreciate you, and we will be here again next week.